One day when I was in high school, my friend Liz invited me and 2 other girlfriends to her family's cabin for the weekend. It was in a beautiful area about an hour away from my home. It was at the edge of the woods and right alongside a stunning lake. We were going to just hang out, take lots of pictures, and go paddleboarding. Of course, I knew that my parents wouldn't let me go if they knew there weren't going to be any adults. So I fibbed a little and told them Liz's parents were going to be there too. They didn't ask any questions and didn't seem to have any suspicions. I felt bad for lying to them, but it was senior year and college was just around the corner. I was running out of time to make special memories like these with my friends. I packed a bag full of clothes, bathing suits, sunscreen, and some camera equipment. I loved photography and was hoping to get some cool Snapshots during the trip. The next morning, Liz picked me up and the 4 of us hit the road. We arrived at the cabin without any trouble, and we were all thrilled to begin our weekend vacation. The house was so big that we each got our own rooms to stay in. They even had a hot tub that we tried out right away. The first day went off without a hitch, with plenty of laughter and fun. The next morning, I woke up earlier than everyone else. I laid in bed and scrolled through my phone for a while before deciding to go outside. It was a beautiful day and I didn't miss any of it. I threw on an outfit and grabbed my camera from my bag before heading downstairs and out the door. I snapped a few photos of the sun glistening off the lake before something caught my eye. It was a stunning yellow hummingbird drinking nectar from a flower. As I moved closer to take a photo, it began flying away into the woods. I went after it, running as it flew deeper and deeper into the woods before finally settling on a moss-covered tree. I snapped a photo, capturing it just in time. Pleased with myself, I looked at the camera screen to admire the photo. It wasn't until I looked up and began to take in my surroundings that I realized how deep in the woods I really was. I hadn't been paying any attention to my path when I had entered the forest, and I didn't even remember which way I had come from. There weren't any trail markers or even a paved path. The woods were so thick that things appeared dark, despite the fact that it was a bright, sunny day. Still, this was no reason to panic. As I reached into my pocket to grab my cell phone, I thought about how lucky I was to have remembered it. I could easily pull up a compass app or a GPS and find my way out that way. But when I unlocked my phone and tried to pull up an app, I realized I had no service whatsoever. I began walking around holding my phone up in the air in hopes of picking up some sort of signal, but I got nothing. I could feel the anxiety growing in my chest, but I was still determined not to lose my cool. I would simply try to retrace my steps. I wandered in the woods for nearly 30 minutes, but recognized nothing. My heart began to race as I realized how bad this was. Not only did I not tell my friends I was going out in the woods, but I had no food or water on me, and it was a hot day. I tried to remember how long someone can go without having anything to drink. I had only my camera and the clothes on my back. I decided I needed a way to tell where I had been, so I wouldn't just walk in circles. I grabbed a stick and used it to make an X in the ground every few meters. I walked, and before long, the sun was directly above me, so I knew it was about noon. Surely my friends had woken up and wondered where I was. Maybe they had been searching for me, or called for help. I listened for anything that might be a sign of where I was. I tried to hear any sounds of traffic out in the distance to see if maybe I was near a highway. I listened for the sound of running water, but there was nothing. I had walked all day, and I still had no idea where I was. I hadn't grown up in the woods, so I didn't know any kind of tricks of how to navigate or figure out my position. I came up with a desperate idea to climb a tree and see if a higher vantage point would help me figure it out. But after making it up only a few limbs, my foot slipped and I fell, hitting the ground hard. I wanted to cry, but knew that doing so would only cause me to dehydrate faster. By the time evening came and the sun began to set, my panic was starting to set in. I couldn't stand the thought of being trapped here overnight. I imagined how horrifying it would be with complete darkness. I thought about the mosquitoes and other insects. The darker it got, the more scared I became about who or what could be with me in the woods. I could barely see a few feet ahead of me, and I had no weapon. My paranoia was running wild as I felt as if I was being watched. I was no match for a bobcat or a mountain lion. I felt like prey and knew it was only a matter of time until something awful happened. I knew trying to sleep wasn't going to be an option, so I continued to walk in hopes of somehow finding my way out of the dense foliage. Even though my phone didn't have a signal, I could still use it as a decent flashlight to illuminate my path, so I didn't walk headfirst into trees. But I knew my battery would run out eventually, and soon I would have no source of light. I stumbled my way through the woods until I eventually was surprised to find myself in a small clearing. There in the clearing was a small shack put together in a haphazard manner with logs and stones. I looked up and my heart nearly stopped as I noticed that there was smoke coming out of the chimney. Someone was inside. Surely they would be able to help me. I was definitely not the type to go up to random people's houses, and I understood that it could be putting myself in a dangerous situation, but I didn't have any other choice. I nervously approached the front door and gave it a few raps. I waited, but no one answered, and I didn't hear anyone stirring inside. Maybe they had left the house and would come home soon, but as time passed and it continued to get darker, I started to get desperate. "Hello? Is anyone home? I could use some help," I called out. There was still no response. I decided to try jiggling the lock, and the door swung open with little force at all. "Hello?" I called out again. The shack was lit only by a couple of candles and appeared to be only a few rooms. There was a wooden table, some personal items, and a bucket of what appeared to be water. A pile of blankets was laid down on the floor in the corner. What I noticed the most, though, was the deadly stench that seemed to be everywhere. It smelled almost like rotting flesh. I heard the pressure of footsteps on the floorboards and I spun around. What I saw made my blood run cold. Standing there was the most unkempt man I had ever seen, if it was even a man. He was covered almost entirely in hair, and instead of clothes wore a dirty rag around his waist. He was probably 7 feet tall and held a makeshift bat with nails sticking out of it as he glared down at me. I let out a blood-curdling scream and took off running past the man out the door. I didn't think. I focused every inch of my being on simply running as fast as I could and putting as much distance between myself and the man as possible. I hadn't bothered to turn on the flashlight on my phone, so I fell frequently, tripping over roots and slamming into trees. Thorns cut into my body and I could feel warm blood dripping down my knees and elbows. I continued to sprint until I physically couldn't anymore. I collapsed to the ground, nearly hyperventilating as I tried to catch my breath. Strangled sobs came out of my mouth as I processed what I had just experienced. I wanted more than ever in my life to be in the comfort of my own bed back home, my parents sleeping just down the hall. I hadn't even graduated yet, and now I was going to most likely die, alone, in the most miserable of settings. As I tried to calm myself down, I felt something that at first I thought was a strong wind. I looked up and could see a rescue chopper flying above me. They were using a powerful light beam pointed at the ground. When the light got to where I was, I jumped up and down, waving my arms around like a crazy person trying to get their attention. To my relief, they had a paramedic in a harness drop down to get me. I was attached to another harness and brought into the helicopter before being transported to the nearest hospital to be treated for my injuries. It was there I learned that my friends had searched for me for over an hour before calling for help. My parents were so relieved that I was okay that they forgot to even be mad about me lying before. I was lucky enough to be dispatched from the hospital the next day, and my injuries were only minor. But no matter how much time goes by, I will never forget the creature in the woods I saw that night. What would you have done in this situation? Drop a comment, like, and subscribe for more terrifying, true stories. Until then, sleep tight.